This is Jim Grimsley. I'm going to read a chapter of my novel, The Dove in the Belly. The chapter's called Then in Rain. It's pretty much self-explanatory. Ben and Ronnie have been apart for a while. So he walked out of the boarding house onto campus. Silver dark, lights bursting, a fog like a movie set, a feeling that it would rain, followed by rain, drizzle, mist, the finest distillation of water as he followed the brick path. He would lose his nerve. The sensible plan made no sense, but he would never be able to wait. He was too sore inside. He was hoping for something and trying to kill the hope, breathing in and out, first past the business school, then in front of the domed library, a few people out, walking as he did without an umbrella in the bits of rain. The path felt so familiar. How late was it? Late enough. The football team had a curfew. He would go, he would. He was afraid, but he would do it anyway. So past the bell tower, into the forest around Keenan Stadium, where he had come so faithfully, so pathetically, every Saturday when there was a home game, sitting in the stands, looking at that tiny figure, shoulder pads and knee pads, helmet, the number all anybody could see from that distance. But there he was, darting in and out, leaping, diving toward receivers. Hardly any of it made sense. Why would Ronny go to the game to watch? Why torment himself when the space between them had gone dark and silent months ago? Anyway, the images tumbled regular as his footsteps tonight, wet pine straw on the bricks, leaves slicked and wet. He was descending the hill now, the squat brick form of Teague through the trees, the scattered lights of Avery, the hill descending past Bryson Field, floodlights dark, the baseball diamond covered, grass of summer in hiding. And how many times had he walked this way, looking up at the balconies of Airing House, counting the floors and the windows to find the room where he used to live, the drum in his chest, the beat that drowned out everything, blood rushing, the rain falling heavier now. He had to keep moving no matter how wet he was. Into the lobby, empty, the snack bar closed. He was dripping, but in the elevator he felt calmer, took a deep breath, rode up to the lobby, and then there it was. He was on the balcony, all quiet, and walked to the room. Anybody could see him now. Taped to the door, a picture of Tate, a sign that said Planet of the Apes. Before he could knock, before he could take a breath, as though the world meant to give him no time at all, the shock of sound, the door opened, and there Ben was in his pajama bottoms, hair a mess, scratching his head, and Ronny started back and looked again, and shock washed over him. What was this expression anyway? Not happiness or welcome, blankness. He shoved Ronny to the door of the suite, looking back at the other rooms, running a hand through his hair, barefoot, cold. "Fuck, you're soaking wet," he said, and stood there. Went back in his room, came out with a blanket, led Ronny to the stairs, wrapped him in the blanket. Jesus. They sat on the steps in the dark. Music adrift from the other wing of the dorm where there was no curfew. Breathing, both. It was too much to believe. Felt so ordinary sitting side by side. Ben hawked and spat onto the concrete. He had brought a sweater and put it on. Started to say something, but he was in the same state as Ronny, had no voice. So they just sat there. It took a while. Ben said, "Fuck, Ronny, you couldn't bring an umbrella?" "I wasn't thinking about rain. Just started." Ben cleared his throat. "I can't believe you did this." "Why not?" "Because I told you not to." "You told me a lot of things." Dim nightlights burned in the walls. Rain multiplied, falling in long gray sweeps, refracting the lights in the parking lot, those visible through the trees, Beyond the black railing of the balcony, as though he could not help himself, Ben moved closer, wrapped his arms around the blanket, the weight of him so warm. Ronny closed his eyes. What rushed out he could not help. He wiped his face. He asked, "How are you?" Ben's voice broken, a sob. "I don't know right now. I just couldn't wait anymore. It was like I didn't know whether you were dead or alive. You knew I was here, didn't you?" "Oh, I knew that all right. I talked to your sister. She's so mad at me." They sat still. Ben rubbed an edge of the blanket over his eyes. Across the courtyard space, a door opened, closed, along the opposite wing. Lights everywhere smeared with rain. Inside, Ronny was sore, tired. He wanted to break down, to let go everything he felt, to throw off the blanket and scream in the stairwell, to the point that the silence echoed as if he had done it. Ben shifted away again. "You're mad at me too." He spoke as though nothing had happened, as though they had only been apart a day or two. "Miss D told me you came to the boarding house." "Yeah, I did. I was too chicken shit to go in. She said you were drunk." "Probably." They couldn't face each other. They couldn't stand up and walk away. Ronny could feel it for them both, their plural. It made him ache, such a piercing fact. He said, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have come." Ben made a low, choking sound. Ronny stood, let the blanket fall. "Let me take you home," Ben said. "No, it's fine. It's just rain. You have curfew." "Ronny, please." "No, I'm fine." Ben was shaking now, sobbing. Ronny watched and let it happen. He wrapped Ben in the blanket. "I came to every game," he said. Ben took a long, ragged breath. "Did you?" "Yes, you should have known I would." He nodded, mouth quivering, so tempting to slide beside him, to pull him close, but not here. "You coming to Duke?" "Can't get a ticket since it's in Durham." He nodded, Ben did. He was collapsing. In the moment it felt as if he had needed to collapse. They were locked together like that, not touching, distant from each other but frozen, unable to separate. Ben released something, shaking, entered someone, though. There had been no sound, but someone was there, a bulk of shadow, and Tate said, "What the fuck, Ben? Who's that?" "Me," said Ronny. "Fuck me dead. It's the brainhead." Tate looked half awake, not sure of himself. "Where you been, boy? We need you down here." "Just here for a minute." "What?" "I have to go." Ben was sobbing, collapsed, and Tate was staring at him, nothing of his swagger, nudging Ben with his foot, kneeling down. "Jesus, Ben." He looked at Ronny. "What did you do?" "Nothing. I haven't seen him since the funeral. I guess it all came back." Tate helpless, faced with a problem he could not beat down. "Help me get him to the room." Ronny shook his head. "You can do that. I need to get home." "You should let me drive you," Ben said between sucking sobs. "I told you." "It's okay." He took a step toward Ben again, looked at Tate. "I wish I could see you guys Saturday." "Yeah, it's going to be sweet." He knelt, looked at Ben. To feel all this too much, he had to be cold. He was cold, his clothes soaked. "It'll be okay," he said, and Ben watched him. "Just beat Duke, okay?" He nodded, small and broken. Ronny walked away down the stairs, the two of them still there, Tate still kneeling. Flights of steps between him and them, and he could still see the picture, even when he stepped into the washing of the weather, a cold enfolding, so sharp and yet so numb. It was the right frame for the night. He set out across the rugby field, through the mud and wet, where they could not see him, crossed into the woods, followed the path, step after step, toward the boarding house. It was done. He had gone to Earinghouse. Ben was barely there, but they were not finished, he and Ben. It should have brought him joy. Instead, only rain, sorrow, and night, sleepless, wondering what would follow. Thank you.